Hey everybody, Dr. Jared Skowron from Spectrum Awakening. So we're going to start first today by talking about the gut. All right. So a lot of people, let me see if I can find, I'm looking on my desk here for some of my, here's exactly what I wanted. What I want to show you, this is a picture that I had developed a few years ago. And this looks at, and I'm so sorry, it's backwards. I've been trying to switch my phone so that it's forward. And this is going to be a real kind of hard pain in the butt when I'm showing you research studies today that I can actually switch my screen. So Facebook is not allowing me to kind of invert my screen horizontally. So everything I'm going to show you is going to be backwards. It's going to be a pain in the butt. But hopefully that will... Hopefully we'll figure that out. Either way, this is a graphic if you can read things backwards or hold your phone up to a mirror. These are different parts of the body that can be affected by autism. And so what I want to do is kind of take us all back to the beginning and let's put that map out in front of us, and look at the whole map of the whole thing and say, hey, what can autism do? We get so in depth into these little minutia, different parts. I want to go big picture today, all right? And big picture is there's a lot of medical parts of our body that are affected or can be affected in autism. And what we need to do with our kids is kind of look at each one. And whether we look at it by testing and seeing if there's any kind of abnormalities or just by treatment trials, all right? You don't need all these fancy lab tests to try something natural or to try a vitamin supplement or try some fish oil. You don't need a lab test to say, hey, we should do that. You could do it and you could see what happens, okay? So the different parts of the body are alphabetically, we're looking at autoimmunity. And this is something we're going to get into a lot in 2022. This is a very, new scientific thought process that's entering my mind that I want to really hash out this year is look at whether or not autism or certain subsets of autism, because everybody's different on the spectrum, it has to do with autoimmune encephalitis or chronic viral encephalitis. And that's basically big terms for inflammation of the brain. Is a child with autism, is their brain inflamed and not developing because there's inflammation from an autoimmune attack, like pandas or PANS, or because there's a chronic viral infection in there, all right? And the chronic viral infection is causing this low-grade inflammation, not an autoimmune condition against the brain. So we're going to look at autoimmunity. We're going to look at brain chemistry. We're going to look at detoxification. We're going to look at genetics. We're going to talk about the gut, digestion, diets, hormones, and mitochondria. These are all the different parts of the body that can be affected with autism. And kids who are mild, sometimes you only need to work on one part or two parts. Kids who are more severe, you might have more things involved. And so there is no one solution to helping your child on the spectrum. Everybody's different, but we do have these different categories and we've got treatments for those different categories. We just got to put this puzzle together for every child differently to help figure it out. So we're going to launch today and talk about the gut and talk about digestion and how that has anything to do with autism at all. So let's go back. Let's rewind the clock. We want to look at big picture, okay? Big picture. Now, when I talk about what causes autism, I always break up our kids into one or two subgroups, okay? Subgroup A, which is a smaller percentage, probably about 10% of kids. So 10% of kids fall into one subgroup, 90% to another subgroup. 10% of kids fall into a group of kids who are born with a genetic problem, okay? Sometimes people are born with genetic issues. Sometimes you're born with Down syndrome. Sometimes you're born with Fragile X. Sometimes you're born with a myriad of genetic conditions that you did not inherit from your parents. It just happened, okay? How do these genetic issues happen? Well, sometimes the sperm meets the egg and something goes wrong with the DNA and you are born with a genetic issue. Again, let's use Down syndrome as an example. Parents don't have Down syndrome, child has Down syndrome. So it's not inherited, it's a problem that occurs when the sperm meets the egg, and it happens, okay? So about 10% of our kids on the spectrum have this kind of genetic issue that they were born with. They did not inherit it, but that's how they came out, okay? And those kind of kids are often slow to develop from the beginning, all right? And it's usually when we talk about autism, Physical development is usually fine. It's all about mental development, it's all about language, it's all about eye contact, sensory, and motor function. So it's a neurological developmental issue, not the rest of the body developmental issue, okay? You're still sitting up and crawling and walking at a normal time frame and throwing a ball, etc. That is unless you're a group of kids, with the subset of mitochondrial problems. We have a lot of motor issues there. Different story. But again, you got this 10% subgroup. You're born with a genetic condition. If you feel your child was slow to develop from the beginning, from birth, or if you've been down this biomedical road for a while and gotten zero results, if you're a non-responder, I would highly recommend getting conventional genetic testing done. That includes a CMA and a WES. Now, ask your physician for those, okay? Your insurance may cover that, depends on your insurance plan. We have these CMA and WES genetics on our website if you ever want to pay out of pocket for them. Insurance doesn't work with tests through our website, but we've got them here for you as an option, okay? Next, let's look at the 90% of kids, all right? The 90% of kids have an obvious regression. And a regression is when a child is starting to have skills. They're making eye contact, they have a few words, they got mama, they got dada, that kind of thing. And then all of a sudden, gone, disappears, okay? That disappearance is called regression. So we have this regressive autism, which is a larger part of our kids, 90% of those kids. In those kids, the cause is normally some kind of toxicity, okay? And there's a myriad of toxins out there. We're concerned with certain heavy metals like aluminum and mercury. We're also concerned with glyphosates and genetically modified foods. We're concerned with pesticides. These all have lots of research of potentially being neurotoxic, okay? I'm also very concerned about Tylenol, okay? Tylenol, also known as acetaminophen, also known as paracetamol, also known as Calpol, all right? We've got research there that just too much prescription of those typical anti-inflammatories can also contribute to regressive autism as well, all right? And how do those things cause a problem? Well, those toxins can get into the brain and cause problems with brain development. They can also cause problems in your mitochondria. Mitochondria are the parts of every cell that create energy. And if those cells aren't creating energy efficiently, they're not going to fuel the immune system. They're not going to fuel the digestive system. One of the major parts of the body that needs a lot of energy from these mitochondria is the gut. And why is the gut so important? You have to digest your food. You have to absorb the nutrients. You have to keep moving stuff through that pipeline so that you're pooping, okay? So you may have constipation. You may have digestive problems. You may have bloating. You may have gas. You may have leaky gut. You may have abdominal pain. You may have abnormal bowels, okay? Because your gut in general is not working, and that gut is responsible for the digestion of your food, the absorption of nutrients, and housing a bunch of other tenants, okay? What do I mean by housing other tenants? Well, we have a huge amount of live organisms, bacteria, viruses, parasites, etc., yeast that live inside our body. In fact, we have 10 times more of those other organisms in our body than we have cells of our body. All right, so they are very important. They are known as probiotics. They are known as the microbiome. A lot of buzzwords about these things, but they are an essential part of our digestion and our gut and our health and well-being, okay? We have a symbiotic relationship with them. We give them a home, we give them food through our mouth, and they help us in many ways. All right, so we're gonna talk about today is how that gut can affect children with autism, all right? Now, I do not believe that gut problems cause most autism, but I do believe that they contribute to it getting better or contribute to it getting worse. So a lot of the times you'll hear or you'll read about, you want to start by treating the gut, you want to start with the gut-brain connection. What does that really mean? Well, let's get into some research. I found this study that was literally published yesterday. And again, I apologize that these are backwards. I normally am able to switch the phone so that everything looks normal to you, and for some reason my phone is not letting me do that. So my apologies for that. I'm still going to hold up the research studies. They're just backwards, but you'll get the idea, okay? So the first study, it was published on January 5th, and this is the role of gut microbiome in human neurological disorders. Now, I highlighted a lot here. Hard for me to read it backwards on my phone, so I'm just going to do this. what it says is, and I highlighted a lot of this because it's a really good explanation about things in general. Now, this says the human body is full of extensive number of commensal microbes consisting of bacteria, viruses, and fungus, including yeast and mold. All right? They are collectively termed the human microbiome, as we talked about. All right? These microbe communities play a central role in the maturation and development of the immune system. So when we start talking about autoimmune encephalitis and autoimmune reactions against the brain, when we start talking about chronic viral infections, okay, the gut and its microbiome is essential to helping the immune system function. So these microbe communities play a central role in the maturation and development of the immune system and the central nervous system. Various factors, including genetics, environmental factors, lifestyle, diet, okay, antibiotic use, non-antibiotic use, they all affect the composition of the microbiomes or the living organisms inside of us, all right? Now, an imbalance of that gut microbiota known as dysbiosis. So dysbiosis just means the bugs that should be there are not there and other bugs are there, okay? This is shown to be associated with the onset and progression of neurological diseases. Clinical research is related to the gut microbiome for treating neurological conditions, including autism. And these interventions show great promise. So kind of a summary research study literally published yesterday about how important this stuff is. All right, here's another research study published just last year, the effect of probiotics and prebiotics on the gut microbiome of autistic children. And what this basically says is that probiotics and prebiotics, these treatments result in a positive modulation of the metabolic activity of children with autism. So let's stop there and talk about probiotics and prebiotics, okay? Probiotics are good bacteria, okay? They're bacteria that are part of this microbiome. They're in our gut and they need to be there, okay? If you don't have good levels of those, you can replace them by taking them. All right, I got a supplement of a probiotic. Now, here's the thing. Most probiotics in your gut don't breathe oxygen. There's no oxygen in there, okay? There shouldn't be much air in there unless you're really gassy, okay? But there's no air down there, or very little. So the organisms that live in there don't breathe oxygen, all right? The probiotic supplements that we can give need to be able to live in an oxygen environment, as is the air. All right, so we can only supplement certain probiotics, mostly lactobacillus strains and bifidus strains. So we're kind of limited on how we can supplement probiotics. But the better way to do it is actually with fiber, okay? Again, we're a home for these organisms. We're a home for these probiotics, all right? We feed them, all right? If we feed them good food, good bugs live there. If we feed bad food, bad bugs live there. So if you eat sugar all day, you're gonna get bad bugs, all right? Bad bugs are gonna live where they get their sugar. If you eat a lot of fiber, fiber is so important for our gut health, okay? Just any food that has fiber, that's vegetables, that's fruits, that's beans, okay? That's whole grains. You need that fiber because that fiber is much better than sugar to keep the good microbiome and the good gut bugs down there, all right? So you wanna make sure the good bugs are there and you feed them with fiber. So from a dietary perspective, as long as you have enough fiber in your diet, you should have decent probiotics, okay? Now, if you don't, then you can supplement, all right? You can supplement with probiotics, you can supplement with prebiotics, all right? Probiotics are the good bacteria. Prebiotics is certain fibers, and they are the food for the probiotics. So prebiotics are the food for probiotics. Okay, that's the difference. All right, and a lot of people will ask me, which do I need? Do I need a probiotic? Do I need a prebiotic? Do I do both? Can I do both? This research study, published in October of 2021, so just a few months ago, talks about combining prebiotics and probiotics in mouse studies of autism. And basically what it says is that the combination of probiotics and prebiotics is more effective in improving mood and memory and learning in animal studies of autism when they use both a probiotic and a prebiotic, and it's better than just using one or the other, okay? Here's another one. Here's the effects of probiotics and prebiotics when we look at behavioral symptoms in autism. And what it basically says is using both has beneficial effects in kids with autism for their behaviors and their gastrointestinal symptoms. All right. Now, how do you know if you need these, or how do you know if they're going to help? Well, you can do one of two things. A, you can try it and see what works, or B, you can do a test and see what you need, all right? So there are different stool tests out there, and I would recommend either the GI MAP or the Genova GIFX, all right? We have both of those lab tests on our website if you want to get them with us, or if you can get them through your physician, okay? This is an example of the GI MAP test. What the GI MAP test will look at are different bacterial pathogens, such as C. diff, as this report shows. It'll also look for different parasites. It'll also look for different viruses, okay? What these tests will also show are things like H. pylori. Do you have H. pylori? I've seen it plenty of times. We'll look at your good bacteria, including the bifidus and the lactobacillus. These are the ones you're going to be able to supplement with probiotics. These other probiotic or good microbiome, you cannot take as a supplement. You've got to get by adding fiber or prebiotics, okay? So you can test for these and say, hey, I need a probiotic, all right? These tests are also going to look for yeast. So, you know, this one here, we're looking for candida. You may have a multitude of different yeast infections here, more viruses you can test for. And a good stool test is also going to look at digestion. So, are you digesting your food? Do you need digestive enzymes? All right. How much inflammation is there? Do you presumably have an infection because there's inflammation? Or can we look at celiac issues through inflammatory markers? All right. So this is what a good stool test is going to show you. And I call this a good stool test because these stool tests made by these specialty companies are much more advanced than typical stool tests you'll get from a big box lab, like Quest and LabCorp, okay? Their stool tests those stool tests pale in comparison to things like this. Again, you get what you pay for. I will have to say LabCorp's new PCR culture is really cool. Quest doesn't seem to have anything like that. But again, none of these labs are gonna look for yeast. They're not gonna look for candida unless you check the blood. Now, what can we see in the blood? What we see in the blood are antibodies for yeast. Okay, so if you can't catch yeast in your stool, and look for stool yeast, then we can actually look for antibodies to it, just like we would look for antibodies to anything and everything, okay? Have you had COVID before? You can test your COVID antibodies. Did your MMR vaccine work? Are you immune to measles and mumps and rubella? You can check that by looking at antibodies. Do you have Lyme disease? You check the antibodies, okay? So you can test for candida by looking at the antibodies. So this is anti-candida antibodies in children with autism. So we're basically trying to find out if somebody has candida by looking at yeast antibodies, okay? So this says candida was found with these blood antibodies in 36% of kids with autism and only 14% of kids who are neurotypical, all right? So it's almost 3 times as much. Real quick question from Katie. Can we do an antibody test for Noah? And Katie's a patient, or Noah's a patient. Katie, reach out to our office. That's going to be the best way if you want me to order labs. So for those of you who are patients, we order a lot of labs for our patients. If you're not a patient, you can either contact our office, become a patient, have an appointment, or order these labs through our website. GI dysfunction, based on this study again, GI dysfunction was found in about half of kids with autism that had these candida antibodies, okay? So candida is a real thing as well, and there's different ways to test for it. One last research study talks about intestinal dysbiosis and yeast isolation in stool of subjects with autism. Again, I really apologize if these are backwards. This says high frequency of gastrointestinal yeast is present in autism. This study says 57% of kids with autism have yeast and no controls do, based on their research study. Dysbiosis, altered gut bacteria, appears to be sustained if there's low probiotic levels, such as lactobacillus, okay? Low mild gut inflammation and intestinal permeability, same thing as leaky gut, was demonstrated together in kids with autism in the presence of GI symptoms. All right, so basically what does this mean? This means that, and again, I'm showing you a research study that's backwards. This means that gut infections, gut inflammation, poor microbiome levels, infections can all worsen autism, and treating them can make some of the symptoms of autism better. And again, I don't think the gut is the cause of it all, but it's definitely a big part of the process. So for some of us, we need to really treat the gut, okay? That term's a little overused. I'm getting tired of it, but you get what I mean. How do we do that, okay? If you want to test, get a good stool test, like the GI map or the Genova GIFX. We have those on our website. If you want to get ours, if you want to get it through your physician, get it through your physician, okay? But you can figure out your probiotic levels and if you have an infection and your digestion, etc., and your prebiotic levels. The prebiotics you cannot find out on the GI map, only the Genova GIFX. Through a short chain fatty acid analysis. Anyway, if you don't want to do the testing, what do? Okay? Consider a probiotic and a prebiotic. Again, just like that research study I showed, both together seemingly are better. All right. Now, there are other doctors who have protocols out there that say you should not take a probiotic and a prebiotic together. Hey, you talk to different doctors, you get different opinions. What matters is you do what works for your child. All right. That's all that matters. You do something and it works, you keep doing it. You do something that doesn't work, try something else. Okay. So probiotic and prebiotic, if you want to try ours, we have a probiotic called Gut Reset. All right. We have a prebiotic called Prebiotic Supreme. Okay. Do you need a prebiotic? Not if you're eating enough dietary fiber. If you've got a good diet with lots of fiber, you don't need a prebiotic. You're eating it. Okay. But if you don't get a lot of fiber, a lot of our kids don't want to chew. How many of our kids want to eat 6 servings of vegetables a day? How many of our kids are going to eat brown rice instead of white rice? All right. How many of our kids are eating beans on a regular basis? Not too many. All right. So prebiotic might be necessary. So those are 2 things you can do. If you do have an infection, okay, if your child has a red ring around their anus, I was gonna say ring around the rosy, but redness around the anus is gonna be a sign of candida, all right? Unexplained, inappropriate laughter is a sign of dysbiosis, all right? The reason behind that, if you have these kids who just laugh for no reason, okay, they're a little drunk. What? My kid doesn't drink alcohol. That's true, but guess what? The bad microbiome, the bad gut bugs, especially bad yeast, will turn sugar into alcohol. Okay, that's how we make drinks. All right. So like I'll homebrew beer. All right. And what do? We add the hops, we add the yeast, we add the barley, yada yada, and you get this tea. All right. You basically get this beer tea that's not alcoholic. Then you add yeast. The yeast convert the sugar into alcohol. And that's how you make beer or wine or any kind of alcohol, okay? It's the magic of yeast. They turn sugar into alcohol. So if you have a child with inappropriate laughter, it might be due to alcohol from yeast in the gut. I actually have a breathalyzer in my office that we use to see how many of our kids have elevated blood alcohol based on their breath, okay? So just an explanation. So you can use the probiotics, you can use the prebiotics. Here's a quick clinical note. If you gave your child probiotics or prebiotics and they seem to get worse, that's a die-off reaction. That is a reaction of these bugs getting killed by our treatments, and they kind of go, kicking and screaming on the way out, all right? And now there's a technical reason for that. There's a protein inside the yeast and inside these bacteria that actually get into the bloodstream, get into the brain and cause anxiety. All right, they hit an anxiety button out here. So that's why we have these behavioral changes as we kill bad infections. So if that happens, and hold on, Katie said, can I actually breathalyzer Noah? Yeah, you can, sure. It's quite fun to do. And anyway, if you do probiotics or prebiotics and your child seems to get worse, all right, you're getting a die-off reaction and these proteins are getting into the brain and causing anxiety, and that's what you're seeing. It's working. Don't stop it, but let's reduce the dose and add some binders like charcoal, all right, binders like chlorella. Those are good things to help reduce these side effects, if you will, of the process, all right? Treasure just asked, can molybdenum help die-off? I don't know. I've never used that. I've never used molybdenum for die-off, but if it does work, use it. All right. Also, you can add on biofilm enzymes. You can add on natural antifungals, all right? We've got products like our Spectrum Awakening Paris layer, if you can swallow pills. Or we've got our yeast mold bundle, which is a combination of biofilm enzymes and antifungal herbs and binders, all right? Try our yeast mold bundle. Try our Paris layer, probiotics, prebiotics, all right? Try this stuff with your child to see if it works, okay? We can throw on diet here real quick and then get to our questions and answers. Should you change your diet for your child? Yes, you should. What diet is best for my child? There are so many diets out there. It's impossible to have one diet for everybody. It is just genetically impossible. Different people do well and bad on different foods. So you may want to consider avoiding gluten. You may want to consider avoiding dairy. You may want to consider avoiding carbs, okay, or grains. Not vegetable. I wouldn't avoid vegetables and fruits, but can I avoid grain products? All right. You never know what these diets are going to do, if they're going to work or if they're not going to work, until you try them 100%. All right, and that's hard to do. All right, I get it. I've got a 9-year-old. We raised her gluten-free, dairy-free. Now she's just dairy-free. It's a lot of work. All right, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of social pressure. But if it's going to help your child, is it worth the effort? And that's the question you got to ask yourself. Okay, and again, there's no one-size-fits-all diet for autism. Never has been. Doesn't work. But try removing certain foods as an experiment. But you got to be 100%. Okay, and how does that work? That reduces inflammation. Okay, inflammation from certain foods causes leaky gut, causes these problems. The inflammation causes dysbiosis, and you got infections, yada yada. All right, so that's how that kind of works. All right, so that's kind of big picture gut health with autism. Okay, so let me kind of summarize, then I'll get to the Q&A. When we look at kids, when we look at anybody, all right, we've got good bugs that live in our intestines, okay? We feed those good bugs with healthy food. If we eat sugar, a lot of sugar, if we take a lot of antibiotics, those are gonna start to change the bugs that live in our gut from good ones to bad ones. And those bad ones will affect our mood. They will cause inflammation. That inflammation will cause intestinal permeability or leaky gut, and that can cause a lot of digestion problems, maybe absorption problems. Those are not as common in my opinion. The digestion problems are a problem, and the behavioral changes that you get because those bugs produce chemicals that get into the bloodstream, get into the brain, and affect your mood, just like psychiatric medications get into your gut, get into your bloodstream, and affect your mood. They're just chemicals, all right? So you want to make sure you have the good bugs in your system. All right, either take a probiotic and a prebiotic based on this research together, such as our Gut Reset and our Prebiotic Supreme. Consider a clean out of bad bugs, such as with our yeast mold bundle or our Paris layer supplement, or get a stool test, okay? We got the GI map, we got the Genova GI effects on our website, or get it through your physician.